Hi there and welcome back to another video. This is Gina from McGuire. Today I thought I'd go back and do something that I haven't done in a while, and that is a video where I show how to stretch a stamp and get new looks from it. So today I have one stamp set and I'm going to show 5 fast techniques that you can do with that set. Now keep in mind I used a fun new stamp set that I'll show you in a few moments. However, you could do these techniques with a variety of different stamps that you may have on hand. Let's start by looking at the stamp set that I'm featuring. This is the Friendship Blooms stamp set from Hero Arts and Gina K Designs. Now Gina K Designs team designed this beautiful set. It's a big one, 6x8, so that flower is huge. And they designed it for Hero Arts in honor of their 45th anniversary. Gina K and Hero Arts are good friends, and they're good friends of mine too. And I think it's really neat that they're showing a collaborative spirit instead of a competitive one in our industry. Last month, Concord and Ninth did one for Hero Arts in their honor. This month is Gina K's turn. Now you can see this big image covers a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch note card nicely. But for those of you who like to do 5x7 cards, this is excellent for that too. Now when I see that large floral image, it just screams to me that it wants to be colored. It would be perfect for any kind of coloring technique, Copics, watercolor, anything. But I thought I'd share something different and show you fast techniques for a stamp like this that don't involve taking a ton of time to coloring, but are rather creative ways you can use that stamp set. This video is part of a blog hop, and I'll link to that below, where a lot of people will be coloring this image, so I wanted to do something different. Okay, let's start with my first of the 5 ideas, and that is to do a heat embossed vellum overlay on my card. This is really fast to do and works great with a variety of images. I'm starting with a piece of vellum that I'm scoring down the middle and then folding in half to create 2 top folding note cards. I'm using a platinum vellum that has some sparkle to it. I tend to reach for this over regular vellum often just because it has a little more interest. Now I'm going to cut this in half, and I have 2 vellum note cards, and I'll use one on this card. Now I'm using my MISTI stamping tool since this is a large image. You could also use a large clear plate to stamp with this, or you could lay the stamp on your desk with the stamp side up, ink it, and lay your paper on it. Any would work just fine. I'm using an anti-static powder tool on my vellum, and then I'm inking up my stamp with VersaMark Ink, which is just a clear sticky ink. You could do any kind of heat embossing on here. I just love the look of the white embossing on the vellum. After I've stamped that, I will go ahead and add white embossing powder. I like to use Hero Arts white embossing powder. And then I will heat set that. Now when I heat set this, I let my heat gun get good and hot first. I want it to be super hot before I use it. And I keep the heat gun moving so that it doesn't cause warping to the vellum. Next, I just trimmed a little bit off each side so my vellum overlay would be more narrow than the card that we'll add it to. Now, if you do find warping with your vellum, there's a trick that you can do to flatten the vellum back out, and that is to run it through your die cut machine. So I put down my regular cutting plate, then I put down a metal adapter plate. I put my vellum on top, then another cutting plate on top of that. I don't have any die in here, and I run it through, and that kind of squishes it and flattens it. If you don't have a metal adapter plate, you could instead put your vellum piece inside a folded piece of cardstock, and that'll protect it and give a little bit of pressure to squish it and make it flat again. Now for the note card itself, I'm using this Simon Says Stamp You Matter stamp. I thought it'd be fun to do some tone-on-tone stamping. You could use any stamp here. You could even use the floral image again. Now this is a new color of Hero Arts cardstock that is gorgeous. I don't have any color cardstock like this. It's such a great, bright periwinkle blue. I just love it. And I'm stamping on it with Stonewash ink from Hero Arts, but any ink here would work. You could even use VersaMark. Now it's time to add our vellum overlay to the note card. I'm putting a strip of Lawn Fawn double-sided tape right along the inside back top of our vellum overlay and trimming off the excess. This will show through a little bit, but not much, and again, it'll be on the back of the note card. Okay, so now I can remove the release paper from this and slip this right on top of our note card itself. You could instead use a ribbon or a string and tie the two together along the top, but I like this so that it just kind of looks like it's floating on there. I also wanted to show you that this large flower image is wonderful to stamp on your envelope flaps. So I just picked a darker blue color and an envelope from Simon Says Stamp. I'll link to the envelopes I use below. And there we got a tone-on-tone floral image on the flap of our envelope, and it'll match our card perfectly. Now I went ahead and added a white heat embossed sentiment onto a die cut circle and added that to the front of our card. I could also stamp another greeting behind that on the blue note card, but I decided to leave it as is. I also added a few pearls here and there to the heat embossing just for a little interest. If you wanted, you could use your Copic or permanent markers to add color to these flower images by coloring on the back of the vellum, but I really like this one color card and letting that blue cardstock shine. And by the way, if you're interested in more vellum overlay videos, I'll put a link to some of them below in my YouTube description so you can check them out. Okay, my second idea for using this stamp set is to do spotlight coloring. This means you don't have to take the time to color the entire card, only a portion of it. And in this case, I decided to make that shape a heart. This is fast and easy to do and works with any large image or repeated stamped image. So I have a white note card here that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I'm stamping that floral image with Gina Amalgam Whisper ink, which is a nice, soft, warm gray ink. It's just beautiful. I wanted it to show up a little bit more, so I went ahead and stamped it again. So this will be a subtle image on the back of our note card. I'm going to stamp the same image onto a piece of white cardstock. This is Neenah Classic Crest Solar White cardstock. And I'm stamping that with Gina Jet Black Amalgam ink. This is a Copic friendly ink. In fact, you can use any coloring method with it and it'll stay nice and crisp. Now I'm picking a portion of the top center of our floral image and using a Hero Arts heart die to cut it out. So I'm just going to do some quick coloring with Copic markers. You could use any coloring method you're most comfortable with here. I say reach for whatever you're most comfortable with because it'll make the process faster. And we're looking for techniques that are a bit faster than others. So instead of having to color that whole floral area, I'm just having to color the heart-shaped piece, which took me about 15 minutes. I even colored the background here, which I did that same kind of bluish purple color, so that the entire heart would be completely colored. I also used the same heart die to cut from white craft foam. This has a bit of dimension to it, and I'm going to glue it behind our flowered heart. That way this would stand off the card a little bit and have some dimension. I'm using Gina Connect liquid adhesive. You don't need to use a whole lot, and this will hold tight. Now I'm going to add this onto our card, making sure the floral image is continuous from the note card over that heart. So we're lining the pattern up. Now I decided to change this up and I cut my background down to 4 inches wide by 5 1/2 inches tall. And I added it to a Hero Arts black note card. I added a Sweet Friend sentiment to the center from the same stamp set that I used for the big flower. Now whenever I do a black note card, I like to put a white cardstock piece inside so that I have a place to write my personal message. And by the way, if you're looking for a really dark, nice, thick black cardstock, I recommend Hero Arts Pitch Black. Now if you're interested in other ideas using spotlight stamping like this, I will have links to videos below in my description. Okay, let's move on to our third idea, and this one is to do stamp tracing. This is a personal favorite of mine because I've always wanted to be an artist that can draw images like this, and I just can't do it. So this gives me an opportunity to trace one and feel like I drew it and look like I drew it. I again used Hero Arts Lapis cardstock, that new beautiful blue color, to create a top folding note card that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I arrange my large flower image in my MISTI stamping tool, and this time I'm stamping with VersaMark Ink. You could use VersaMark Ink or any other light ink that would barely show up when stamped on your note card. It really doesn't need to be dark or match perfect because we're going to trace over it. Now I'm going to trace over this using my Pilot silver marker. I really like this silver marker. It gives such an amazing metallic shine. And I'm simply going to trace the image. Now you could instead silver heat emboss the image, but this gives you a smooth result that looks like you drew it, and the metallic shine is really cool with this pen. You could use any silver gel pen if you have that instead, or you could use colored gel pens, white gel pen, anything you have on hand. You could even stamp this image on a white note card with a super light ink, such as that Gina Whisper ink that I used before, and trace over it with colored markers so that you have a colored outline image. Well, I decided to go with the silver for the flowers, and I wanted the leaves to be gold. Now, I couldn't find my gold pilot marker, so I instead just used a gold gel pen, and that shows that really you can use whatever you have on hand. Another great thing about this technique is it doesn't have to be perfect. It's going to end up looking hand-drawn, and it's okay if some of the ink shows around it because it makes it look kind of like a shadow. It took me about 15 minutes to do all that tracing. Now I'm putting this back in my MISTI, and I put the Simon Says Stamp Grid Transparency on it. The reason I'm doing that is I want to make sure that I stamp my sentiment straight after I took the time to do all of that drawing. So I'm using that grid to help me make sure it is straight. Then I close the door on my MISTI, pick up that stamp, and remove the grid. And now I can white heat emboss this here. So I'm first using my anti-static powder tool, stamping with VersaMark Ink, and adding Gina white fine embossing powder. Whenever I want to white heat emboss a sentiment, that's the powder I reach for because it's super fine. Now you'll notice that I have some extra white powder right next to that T. I could have wiped it off before I heat embossed, but I wanted to show you this. You could use the Couture Creations Creative Detailer tool to kind of erase that extra embossing, like you saw me do there. It's a handy tool to have for ink boo-boos or embossing boo-boos, as you see here. I also used the same stamp with the Gina Whisper ink to stamp on that matching envelope. And there you can see that smooth metallic shine that you get by stamp tracing an image. If you're looking for other stamp tracing ideas, I have a video linked below. Okay, my next idea is to do shimmer lifting. This is a fun technique that's very quick to do and you can do with a lot of stamped images you have. Okay, so first I'm starting with white cardstock, and I'm using my anti-static powder tool. I am then stamping that large floral image with VersaMark Ink. You'll see that I didn't clean my stamp so well after the last time, but that's okay, because my white embossing powder will cover that up. So I'm just basically white heat embossing on white cardstock. I'll repeat this and stamp that image again towards the bottom of the card piece too. So I have floral image on the top and the bottom. That's another nice thing about a large image like this one, because you can use portions of it to create little borders or only stamp on a corner. After I added a white heat embossed sentiment, it's time to add inking on top. I'm using Distress Oxide ink, and this is the Abandoned Coral color. It's such a gorgeous color. You could use Distress Oxide or Distress ink here, or many other dye inks that might react with water. Those are the ones that work best. I'm applying a heavy amount of color with an ink blending tool, and then buffing away the excess from on top of the white embossing with a dry cloth. I'm working on a watercolor mat from Waffle flower because look, it kind of holds my paper as I add inking on top, so I don't have to get fingerprints on my ink surface. Okay, once I'm done, I'm going to rub away the excess ink with a dry cloth, and there we have a heavily inked piece. Now I could leave this piece as is, but instead I wanted to add some shimmer to the floral images. I'm using a Tonic Aqua Shimmer pen. This is kind of like a liquid with shimmer in it. Well, since I used Distress Oxide ink, this liquid is going to cause that Distress Oxide ink to react, and it'll kind of get the color moving again. So after I put down some of the shimmer, I use a cloth to dab it because that lifts away some of that coral color from those floral images, but it does leave the shimmer behind. So this will soften the flower images, give it a softer coral look, and give it lots of shimmer. So I'm going to do that to all of the flowers. Now this is one of those techniques that looks really cool in real life. The final results are so shimmery and fun, and it's hard to capture in video and in photos, so you'll just have to trust me on it. I do this technique quite often. If I would have used a darker Distress Oxide ink or Distress ink, the flowers would look even lighter. But I used a pretty light color of ink, so the flowers just get a little lighter. Okay, next I wanted to show you how to do that faux stitching next to the stamp piece. Now I have these Lawn Fawn rectangle dies that have faux stitching around the edge. You can actually use these to create borders too. So I die cut it from white cardstock and I cut off the two edges. One of the edges I'm going to glue to the back of our inked piece so that the faux stitching sticks out on the left. And the other one I'm going to glue to the right side so we have faux stitching there too. So you can give your rectangle stitch dies a different look, a border look, by using them a little creatively. I added that onto a Simon Says Stamp Fog cardstock note card, and then I stamped on my matching envelope. It's really hard to see the shimmer here, but those flowers are a little bit softer and have a great shine to it, which really catches the eye in real life. And once again, if you're looking for more ideas of this technique, even one that has more contrast between the flowers and the background, I do have videos linked below. Okay, my fifth and final idea is to create a full card shaker card. Now, shaker cards are nothing new, but I like to use them with unexpected stamps like this large flower and cover the entire front of a card. And this one's pretty fast to make. Okay, so I'm starting with a piece of cardstock that's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 in the corner of my MISTI, and I arrange my stamped images on it. Now I'm going to remove that piece of cardstock and replace it with a piece of acetate. Any acetate works here as long as you can heat emboss it. I like to use Judikins Embossable window plastic because it doesn't warp when we add heat. You definitely want to use anti-static powder tool on there. Then stamp the images with VersaMark ink. Next, I'll add white embossing powder to it. If you find that the powder sticks all over the acetate, flick it really hard with your finger and that will knock the excess off. I often will use recycled acetate or plastic for this. You just need to test it first to make sure that it doesn't warp when you add heat. When you do heat this, you want to keep your heat gun moving. You don't want to keep heat in one spot too long because it will warp. And you want to make sure your heat gun is very hot before you bring it to the acetate. So there we have this beautiful clear piece with the white heat embossing. To create the frame for my shaker, I like to use 2 Hero Arts rectangle dies, one that's a little bit bigger than another, and cut them from white cardstock. We'll have a large rectangle piece that's left over in the center that we can use on another card. Now that we have our frame, I use Lawn Fawn tape and I cover the back of the frame with that tape, any double-sided tape works, and add that to the front of our acetate. I can then use my scissors to trim off any acetate that's hanging out from the frame. Okay, so next I have a note card that I created from New Hero Arts Meadow cardstock. That's a new green. It's a beautiful, perfect green. And I created a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch note card. On the back of our frame, so on the back of the acetate, I'm adding thin strips of double-sided tape. You want to make sure that you cover all of the edges so nothing comes out of your shaker window. Now, instead of using sequins or things like that in my card, I thought I would put gems inside of the shaker window. When I use gems, I make sure that they're all flipped over to the right direction. That way they'll stay that way in the shaker window. So I use some of these chunky iridescent jewels from Lucy's cards. Then I also use some pretty pink posh green gems and I flipped them all over before I moved on to the next one. And then I also had these clear diamonds left over from Queen & Company. So I put a bunch of them towards the center of my green note card. I find this the fastest and easiest way to create a shaker card. Okay, so now I'm going to take our acetate window frame and put that on top. But I like to first put liquid adhesive onto that foam tape. That way, when we put this on top of our note card, we can wiggle it and move it around before we leave it to dry. So watch, I can put this on top of my card and move it around thanks to that liquid adhesive. And when it dries, it'll stay put and it'll have nice dimension. So there we have our shaker card, super fast to pull together, and it kind of has an elegant feel to it with those jewels floating around inside and that large heat embossed image. I plan to make 4 or 5 of these in different colors of cardstock and give them as a set of note cards for Lila's new teacher. Okay, so there you have 5 ways to take one stamp set and use them with some fast, creative techniques. I hope you'll try this with some stamps that you may have. And check out the links below for similar videos in case you're interested in checking those out. I also have in the description all the supplies that I use on today's cards. And if you're interested, there are a couple other technique videos here in the center that you can check out. Thank you so much for spending your time with me once again. I hope you have a great day and we'll see you soon.